And like you were saying about the SMART goal, all of that stuff, a goal and a target feels like a really solid, rigid thing that is immovable, whereas an intention can be interpreted in different ways. It can be flexible, it can be moved. I might have an intention to write something, but that can mean 100 different things, and it's however I feel on that day with that intention, that's what will come out of it. And I don't need to go. I think with goals and targets there's a real risk of failure, whereas with an intention it can be interpreted in such a way that it never really feels like a failure, because even if I do fail to write that day, I only intended to, and actually maybe it was more valuable for me that day to sit and think, and that feels like enough. And I think if it were a target or a goal, so okay, the goal might be write 1,000 words today, and I don't achieve that, and then I spend the next few days feeling like rubbish because I've failed, whereas an intention to write feels like, okay, well maybe I might not write any words today, but I'm going to read a chapter of this book that's been on my mind, and then that might give me lots of ideas that I can come back to the page with in a few days' time.
Welcome to The Full Stop, a podcast presented by Childless Not By Choice people for the Childless Not By Choice and their cheerleaders and allies. Now, The Full Stop podcast is hosted by Sarah Lawrence, Berenice Howard-Smith and me, Michael Hughes. And we explore themes that make up the childless identity, and we hope that with all our guests, you'll find information, inspiration, and if appropriate, your space in the childless community. Now, please remember, the thoughts expressed are those of the guests alone and not necessarily those of the podcast hosts. Now, with that housekeeping out of the way, we're on to episode 70, and we sat down with our great friends Bindi Shah and Lisa Kassane as we wanted to hear their approach to starting the new year through the lens of being childless.
Bindi Shah and Lisa Kassane. A re-welcome for you. Welcome back to The Full Stop to both of you.
It's like coming home, isn't it?
That's nice.
Thank you.
It's good to see you both.
Yeah, it's good to see you. So today it's our episode 70. I keep going 70 in a slow way because I just need to always look at Michael when they say numbers like that to make sure that it's 70. But I did just do episode 69, so I can count, which is a relief. And yeah, we're talking about intentions, about goal setting, about feelings around that, and going into 2025, which for some people, many of us around the world, might be a little bit nervous about that, cautious. A lot's happened around the world in the past year, and how that feels, without getting political about it, obviously, but there are things that were threatening, I think, into our childless world, and about inclusion and diversity, and feeling perhaps that's under strain too, and how to look after ourselves as well as we go in around setting up our goals, intentions, and maybe some boundaries as well with this. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I know you are as well, Michael.
I certainly am. So how have you both? Oh, actually, you know what we should do? Mm-hmm. Just in case people are just turning in for the first time, tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, who you are and what you do, yes. Bindi, would you like to start?
Yes, so I'm Bindi Shah and I teach meditation. That is my main thing at the moment that I'm doing. And I also do a lot of writing. I do call myself a writer as well. And a poet. I do a lot of poetry, actually, poetry writing. Host, so I teach meditation classes for the Childless Not By Choice community, and I also do a couple of longer programs as well, which are Your Luminous Self and the Right to Heal workshops as well. And something a little bit newer, which has come up during this year a bit, is I've started Women of Colour sessions for Childless Not By Choice. So just looking at that deeper different aspects sometimes of that experience, and some healing and connection through that. So yeah, that's me.
Lisa, what about you?
Yes, hello. So I think I've probably done a completely different intro every time I've been on this podcast because this is my third time coming here. And I said at the beginning, it's like coming home because you guys were the first ever podcast I did. And I always love coming back here to chat to you because it always feels so natural. But in terms of introduction, so I'm Lisa Kassane. I have a couple of things that I do. The thing I do for the childless community and the child-free community as well is I host a business community that's called Flow, and it's very casual. We meet every couple of weeks. We have an online community on Discord, and it's really just a place for particularly founders and freelancers, anyone who works for themselves, to meet other people for business purposes, where no one's going to be sort of sidelined or sideswiped by the whole, well, do you have kids kind of conversations that can often come up, particularly when you're starting out as a freelancer or when you're going into new spaces. One of the things I really focus on is having a space where you can go where you know nobody's going to ask you if you've got kids, because none of us do. So that kind of whole awkward conversation starter is removed from the equation. So that's what Flow is, and that's about 6 months old now, so we're still quite new there. And then the other hat that I wear is as a collector of stories, and I'm still finding the words to describe this one. I have a publication on Medium, which is a blogging platform, and it's called Really Honest Business, and it's about finding the stories that people are telling about their experiences of being in business, and that can be in freelance, in corporate employment, any kind of work situation. I want those stories and I want them to be told with real honesty and integrity. That's also very new because one of the things that I do is I change my mind a lot. So when we're going to talk about goals and intentions in a bit, and I'm going to talk about how I throw all of that out of the window because I find it really difficult to decide on something and then stick to it. One thing that has been consistent through my life and has become really, really prominent recently is that, like you, Bindi, I'm a writer and I'm calling myself a writer, and that feels really, really exciting. So I write a lot of stuff about being childless. I write about my life in general, and I've got a plan, an intention to start writing a novel that I've been preparing for a few months. So the week of Christmas, which I know we're recording before, but it's going to go out after, I have an intention to start writing my novel. So yeah, writer, business community host, those are my titles, I guess.
I love those titles so much. Both of you. I think it's incredible. I think it's very much a testimony to kind of how we don't have to wear one hat. It's okay to wear several.
Yeah.
And you may have similar intentions around those.
I'm feeling like the odd one out.
Are you? Well, you do.
It's all about words, and I love pictures.
But
I'm very
actually, from
visual that way.
words, pictures come with words. I work with pictures and illustrations and with words, and sometimes you need pictures. And actually, I think always for me that actually it's the pictures that come first. When you send me a video through, Michael, it creates words for me as well as actually watching it too. So actually, I think they go together, in my opinion. Would you agree?
Yeah, fair enough. So it sounds like you two have got a lot going on for 2025. So Bindi, I'm very curious about your women of colour work.
Right, yes.
So tell us about that.
So during kind of the years within the childless community and working on myself around aspects of my own childlessness, what I've really come to realize is there is that, unfortunately, in life, especially when we're living more in the Western world, there has been the impact of subconscious bias. There have been interesting and also studies out there, especially around medical systems and things like that going on. So what I realized is perhaps we needed an extra space or a different space for women of color, but also who are childless not by choice. So there is that understanding of maybe we wanted to, and we all wanted to here, but is there kind of just that perhaps another layer, perhaps just that nuance of, okay, there's something else going on here as well, and adding to it, because I feel all of the kind of work around childlessness for me is all around healing. So it is around appreciating our journey, knowing our journey, and then trying as much as we can to move through, to move forward in whatever way we can. So if we ignore a part of ourselves within that, so let's say the women of colour part, or it could be another part of ourselves as well. I think that misses something as well within that healing aspect. Yeah. So, and totally going with my meditation. So basically in the Women of Colour session, we do some meditation, we come together, we do some writing, we connect. So it's that kind of session. So I call it meditation and connect healing session really for women of colour.
And so what are some of the I don't want to say issues, but what are some of the things that are coming out of what you're doing that we as a community need to know about without obviously
Of course.
breaking any confidences?
Yeah, of course. It's interesting. It's about knowing that. So, for example, let's say with IVF or going through clinics and things like that, let's start with that. So, I've never done IVF myself, but the women who are women of colour, have found that that's another discrimination, really. It's a discrimination, and it's a way of not being welcomed as much within that institution. Don't know what to call it, institution. And it's the same within the health system as well. So Black and Asian women are less likely to be heard within those aspects, like the gynecological aspects, and also have more issues. So more fibroids, more issues, but less likely to be heard, less likely to be referred, and all of that. So more kind of that ignoring of health. For me personally, within the adoption process, there was definitely the unconscious bias, or whatever, the discrimination. I don't know really. Sometimes I don't know what to call it, because when I say it's unconscious, some of it is conscious as well. So it's not all unconscious. But at the same time, I like to feel that, yes, it's unconscious, because I like to feel that if people did have that awareness, it wouldn't happen. But unfortunately, this is reality and we live in the real world, and some people are aware, but it does still happen. So, yeah, there was one I mentioned in my piece that I did for World Childless Week, where actually, and with World Childless Week, we had the Childless People of Colour Day, which really kind of opened up a little bit more around that. So in that, I mentioned about how I was asked why my brother has an English name in the adoption process. So first of all, I don't really know what that has to do with the process. I was obviously a baby when my brother was born, so I didn't know why my parents had chosen that name. It just brought a lot of belonging out there around, well, you can't have that name because you're in this country and you look brown. Why do you have that name? And also the whole cultural aspect is actually, that name is also an Indian heritage name. So, there's so many different layers to that, and just that asking, but it was just really kind of like highlighted that, okay, we're in this process. So it was Jay and I, my husband, in this process together, trying our hardest, but just not being, not as easy as perhaps for other people. I know definitely adoption is not easy at all. Fully understand that, but I think it just added another layer of, oh my goodness, what is this? What is this? What are we? Yeah, what is this?
It's another layer, isn't it?
Mm.
It's understanding perhaps how it's the whole self. Would that be right? So there's childlessness, and then there's another layer in terms of kind of other people perhaps excluding, further exclusion, because I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I find the whole thing just
Yeah,
maddening that people would be like that. But yeah, I can imagine that must be really, really tough to add on another layer as well. And it's something else to have to come to terms with, that other people aren't perhaps so kind or even aware as well of perhaps that they are being exclusionary to you.
totally. It's the other layer. It's another layer, an additional layer. And the other thing that I also realized is, as we move through our childlessness and as we move through and think, okay, what is my purpose in life now? What am I, what am I bringing into this life? A lot of that early childhood discrimination comes up again as as a barrier and as a limitation. So we spoke a little bit about our writing. So for me, my writing has always been, I've had to build myself up to write because I did have an early discrimination around writing where in my primary school, so primary school, for those who don't know, is before you are age 11. So it's like your junior school or something, maybe in other countries, that's more, it's called that. So I was very good academically. I was a good reader, a good writer. I went to a church school and I used to speak in church. I was Mary at a nativity. So, and this was in, very early 80s. And it was like, it just seems a different world now. I don't know if you would see a brown Mary, to be honest, at the moment. But then, it was a different world in a way. But then I went to secondary school. So secondary school is when you're 11 and above. And I was put into an English remedial class and totally no tests were done, nothing, totally because of the colour of my skin. Nothing else,
My goodness.
absolutely nothing else.
Wow.
And within half an hour of being in that remedial class, I was taken out, put back into the normal class because obviously they must have realised Bindi can read and write. But the impact of those 30 minutes, the impact of that memory situation, everything that I went through has impacted my writing since, really. And I didn't realize how much until now. Well, it's been a few years now. I think about 5 years that I've realized, 5, 6 years of what kind of impact that's had. So I'm building myself up to write all the time. And at the same time, I know that, I've had years and years of time where it has been really difficult for me. Although I've written wonderful poetry, I've written through the years, but there's still been that block and that barrier, which I find is sad going into our what next lives and finding that, yes, this is part of my what next life, but I still have to really build up to do that as though I was 11 again. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really tough, Bindi. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, 30 minutes can have a lifelong effect. And I guess also, does that make you feel like you need to set your intentions to write? Does that feel that it empowers you to do that? Or is there still a sense of, is that okay to do that? I mean, I'm wondering where that lands for you these days.
I am a writer
Yeah,
and I know I'm a writer
yeah.
and I write. And whether that writing is for others or for myself
Hmm.
doesn't really matter. So I have self-published a poetry book and I will, publish things in the future for sure. But yes, I have intentions to write, and I do write, and I kind of feel that is the first step towards writing is really writing for yourself. I don't know if you all agree with that, but I think writing, journaling, doing it for yourself first, and then if it has a place outward, wonderful. And if it doesn't, you've still written and it's still brought up something and some healing from that. Yeah, I believe in that kind of power of writing to heal, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I really resonate, Bindi, with what you were saying about feeling blocked. I'm not sure I could pinpoint exactly why I feel blocked in the beautiful way that you did, but up until the last couple of years, I didn't call myself a writer, even though it's something that has always been such a huge part of my life. I've journaled, I've written various different things, but I never said it out loud. And then when I finally made that change and started calling myself a writer, even though I didn't feel like one at the beginning, it's like something unlocked inside me, because now I feel like that is absolutely what I am. It is the biggest part of who I am, is that I'm a writer. And one of the things that really helped me change my mindset was a book by a woman called Beth Kempton. She's a mother and she does talk about her children in the book, just as a bit of a trigger warning. But she wrote a book called The Way of the Fearless Writer. And it really draws on a lot of Eastern wisdom and how you've kind of exactly what you were just saying, Bindi, about you've got to write for yourself and you've got to feel how that feels before you can really figure out where it goes in the world. So that was a real turning point for me, reading that novel, reading that book, and just realizing that whether I put it out there in the world or not, I am a writer, and that is part of who I am. And yeah, things from there have just kind of taken their own way and found their own path in a very organic kind of way. And that was, yeah, that I wish I could pinpoint exactly what the cause was for me, Bindi, because I love the way you told that story. But for me, I just think it was just years and years of shame upon shame upon shame. And I am starting to recognize now that I am neurodivergent, and that is really going a long way to helping me understand my life and what's happened up to this point. And I think a lot of my writing focuses around shame, and it's almost like I'm writing the shame away. I'm writing to uncover what I feel shame about, and then letting it go. And it's a very slow process because there's a lot of it. But it is that absolutely that healing journey that you've described.
Fascinating that that's in common. Yeah. I know I saw when I first started writing, I don't call myself a writer. I call myself an artist, but not a writer. Various reasons why. But I remember going and doing my an English lit degree, and it had creative writing in it, and sitting next to a very enthusiastic new grandmother. And that kind of fueled my anger to write even more. And I still have it. It's all sat down here in notebooks. And actually, it was quite like, my God, I was angry. God, it really comes over in the words. It was quite shocking. But I think, yeah, that whole thing of like, okay, I'm going to write this all out. And that was quite useful, and paint it and draw it out eventually. But something unlocked as well, I think, too. And it's quite an interesting way to use words.
I often don't know how I'm feeling until I write it down. That's something I've learned about myself. I can't recognize it until the words are in front of me. And then I go, oh, okay, that's what that was.
Interesting.
And I love the way you said, Berenice, about, you know, that anger, and then you wrote it out. And I do sometimes feel that we need something to write about as well. So it's, yes, for the healing and bringing things out and all of that. But it's interesting because most of my writing, so yes, there's that childless aspect as well, but a lot of my writing this year has been around identity and belonging and things like that. So I think it's like pinpointing perhaps what you want to say about your life, or where you feel a bit, anger, or, you know, those emotions coming up, and saying, right, I'm going to write about this, and then allowing it out that way, because you can feel the passion then, I feel, in the words. And it's like, you know, it's not just, well, I'm just writing to try and write an article because I need to submit something. It's more that passion coming through from the words.
Kind of segues us back sort of to goals and intentions, doesn't it?
Pull us back, Berenice.
I'm going to pull you back onto the topic. But it is true, actually. I think writing can be an intention. I think sitting down, I don't know how many of our listeners have, I know that I certainly experience it too, is that you think, right, okay, my intention today is to write something. And then you're sitting there looking at, for me, a blank page in a book, because I don't tend to write creative writing on a screen. I always have a differentiation. Is that if I'm doing kind of writing for the podcast, writing for my business, which tends to be a bit more sort of more businessy, and the podcast is a different thing. The full stop, I put a different head on for that, and I can't do them on the same day. Infamously, as Michael knows, I can't do both newsletters, my business newsletter and the full stop newsletters, anywhere in the same week. They have to be completely apart because there's different ways of doing things. But anyway, I sit and look at a blank notebook, and you think the intention is to do something today, and when that doesn't happen, it can be quite difficult. And I'm thinking that might be something to sort of we could talk about, is that if we have intentions, where do we start to set them? But if we don't like them because they're too difficult, is there a way of being able to perhaps create something more gentle for ourselves, where we might not feel so challenged? Because I think as childless people, my opinion on intentions is that I've met people who have 5-year plans, and one of them is to have kids. So I always get a bit about them. I'm not sure how that noise is going to work on the transcript, but anyway, a little bit kind of icky about them. So maybe we could start maybe with how one might set intentions or goals, whatever we want to call it, whatever those words are, when we're childless and we might be feeling a bit of an ick about it.
I feel like I've gone completely 180 probably since this time last year in terms of intention and goal setting. So I worked as an employee up until I gave my notice into my last employed job around about this time a year ago. And I'd always been in that corporate world where meetings happened at designated times and things were due on undesignated days, and everything had a place, and everything had it was just goals from morning to night, targets and goals. Everything had to be done in a certain way at a certain time. And when I moved from corporate into freelancing, I took that mindset with me, and I was trying to sort of achieve the same kind of thing as a freelancer. I really struggled to come out of the 9 to 5 mindset. So if I was feeling like at 8 p.m. I really want to do a bit of work, I would stop myself because I felt that I wasn't at work. So it really took me a long time to get out of that mindset. But the whole thing of, right, I need to have a plan, I need to have a business plan, I need to have a plan for what I'm going to do this week, this month, this year. And I got so bogged down by all of that that it's almost like I completely rebelled and said, no, I'm not going to do any of this. Now I have a minimal amount of things in my calendar. My calendar is full, but it's mostly just big blocks of time where I go, right, work on your novel for 3 hours today, work on the marketing for Flow for 3 hours this day. But the difference is I shuffle things around all the time. If I wake up in the morning and I go, I'm really not feeling it, I'm not going to work today, then I don't. And those things come out of the calendar. And so it's almost like I've gone from being completely led by my intentions and goals and targets to being just like floating around in the ether of, well, what's going to happen today, I wonder. And I actually really like this place that I'm in now because I feel like I've completely lifted all the expectations off of myself. And some days I achieve absolutely nothing, and other days I'm just going like I've got a motor and I won't stop until the evening. But the difference is I don't try and plan when those days are going to happen. I just let them happen. And that has been a real mindset shift for me. But as I say, it's taken a good year for me to get here. So I'm coming up to the end of the year now. And I don't actually feel like December, January is a new year for me. I work more with the gardening calendar. So I feel like spring is like new starts for me. So everyone will be sort of getting ready to jump back into things in January, and I'll just be very slowly meandering back towards real world stuff in January. But yeah, I feel like I've gone from being someone who has to plan and have goals for everything to the complete opposite of that. And I don't know where that's going to take me, and I really love that. I love the not knowing.
Wow, that's a big change, Lisa, as
Mm,
well. I
mm,
can imagine from that corporate world and all the meetings and yeah.
Yeah. And congratulations, Lisa. 1 year.
thank you. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, I know that we've known each other for a while. Obviously, you've been on the podcast before, both of you have. But yeah, to see the change in you just from as a friend, as well
Mm,
as knowing each other in other ways, because we do hang out in different places online in terms of in business as well. And yeah, it's been so interesting and such a privilege and an honour to see you
thank you.
change and develop in the way you have. You're a massive inspiration to me
Thank
and to
you.
lots of people. So yeah.
I feel like I'm more myself now than I've ever been. That's
Mm,
something that I really cherish.
yeah.
I'm not doing the things. So when I set out a year ago I was going to be a copywriter. That was the thing that I was going to make my business around. And I had all these expectations of myself that I was going to earn a certain amount of money and I was going to work a certain amount. I was going to work for particular people. None of that has happened, but I don't feel like a failure. I feel like I've achieved so much. And actually I've gotten to a place now where I'm so excited about what's next because I don't know what that is. And that feels really liberating and empowering because I'm not working to some rigid set of rules or targets that I've set myself. I'm just going with whatever is going to happen next. And that feels really, really good.
I think that's fantastic. Bindi, how does that resonate with you in terms of obviously you are doing things for the community so much and also for your journey? Because again, I've known you for a long time as well. And you have changed what you're doing. And that's been really, again, an honour and a privilege to watch that happen. But how does it land with you? Are you where you expected to be, or are you going in different directions?
Similar, a little bit similar with Lisa as well, around not being more in the flow. That's my thing. So being more with the flow, with how we are flowing through life. So this is years and years ago. I used to set goals. I used to be very much a planner, planning things out, and actually quite liking that as well because it does feel as though you are working towards something. Childlessness comes, And it's like, well, I wanted something, I was planning towards something, and it hasn't come about. And it was around that time of, for me, it was really around my health actually as well. So it was around 2012 when my health issues really started to make themselves known and seen. So for those who don't know, I had adenomyosis. So, and which resulted in a lot of pain. So when you've got those health challenges and you have got a lot of pain, that I think also dictates what you're going to do and how much you're going to do, and what, how your plans can go out of the window a little bit when all of these other things come in. So I went really from being a goal setter. I used to do a lot of life coaching. My thesis was actually on goal setting, my life coaching thesis. So I was right there. Yeah, I was right there with the goals. I loved them. All my clients had them. I mean, it was my thing. It was my thing. So I feel as though I have gone away from that, but also still holding space within that with the intentions. So I don't do goals anymore, but I bring in intentions. Intentions are also aims and a plan. So, they're also there. So, but I feel that intentions are more gentle. They're not goals. They're not, do this by this time, and, the whole smart, oriented, specific, gosh, I can't remember, measurable and achievable, all of that, time related. And so nowadays it's more like, okay, have an intention for the year, for a few months, for the week, and be more flexible with it. So I'll have my intention and I'll have my plan. I do have my list. I do have more of a working week. So I do have my hours. I have the classes. So, I'm working around those as well. So I do have things in the diary for time-based things. And then around that, working around being flexible. So for example, if there is a day where I've got more appointments, where I'm not feeling very good, then I'll step back a little bit, look after my health a little bit more, and then do what I had intended to do. Around intentions for a year, I always try to go with the feeling. How do you want to feel? And that's how the word for the year has really come about. It's around how you want to feel during the year. So looking a little bit more emotional based, but that doesn't mean that emotional based word can't achieve you something towards the middle or the end of the year. Because for me, it's all around small steps. If we have goals or intentions which are a little bit big, perhaps a little bit scary, maybe we don't make those steps because it's a little bit too future based. It's a little bit too like, I was doing this when I was trying for a child. I already have those blocks around that. I don't want extra blocks around what my year is going to be like. So if we can take a step back from what we feel we want to do and have that kind of mini small step towards it, all of those small steps will take you such a long way during the year. I can't tell you. I mean, such a long way. And people usually with small steps, because we're always told, what's that thing that people say, go big or go home. And there's all of these things about bigger steps, big. And I feel, and I have seen, that when we do the small steps and we consistently do the small steps, we actually get to the bigger step without even realizing that we've got to that. But when we have the big step in our mind, then it's like, oh my God, I can't do this. I just want to hibernate, lie in bed, not do anything. And so the small steps to get to the intentions and the energy, the emotion of the year.
Love what you said about small steps there, Bindi, because I really, really resonate with that. So I have for probably 10 years said I'm going to write a novel. And that's been my big step. And I just go, right, okay, let's start that now. And I start it, and I inevitably fail because I haven't planned or prepared for it. But this year I've really taken that in a different way, and I've done that small step. So an intention one day might be, I'm just going to go and play on ChatGPT and get them to make an image of my main character. And that might be all I do that day or even that week, but just that little act. And then I take that picture. So I've got my main character, ChatGPT has created me an image of someone, and I put that into my planning document. And then suddenly that person, that character is real, and they're visible to me. I can see it. And it comes back to what you were saying, Michael, about needing a visual as well. I need that visual. And then that unlocked the next small step and the next small step. And now I'm in a position where I haven't just got this vague idea that I'm going to write something. I have an actual plan. And it's taken me 3 months, but I feel so ready now to take this big step. But it's not so big anymore because I've taken all the little steps to get there. So the next little step is, okay, today just open the document and write a couple of sentences. And that might be all it is. But if I do that consistently through the year, with any luck, by the end of the year, I will have a novel. And what happens to that after that point, again, is completely unknown. I don't know where that's going to go. I don't know if it's going to be just a big old bag of crap. But the point is I will have done it, and I would have achieved it by doing all the small steps that get you there. And I think, sorry, I'm waffling now, but one more thing that you said which really, really resonated with me was that intentions and goals almost feel like opposites, because a goal is really rigid, and like you were saying about the SMART goal, all of that stuff, a goal and a target feels like a really solid, rigid thing that is immovable, whereas an intention can be interpreted in different ways. It can be flexible, it can be moved. I might have an intention to write something, but that can mean 100 different things, and it's however I feel on that day with that intention, that's what will come out of it. And I don't need to go, I think with goals and targets, there's a real risk of failure. Whereas with an intention, it can be interpreted in such a way that it never really feels like a failure. Because even if I do fail to write that day, I only intended to. And actually, maybe it was more valuable for me that day to sit and think. And that feels like enough. And I think if it were a target or a goal, so, okay, the goal might be write 1,000 words today, and I don't achieve that, and then I spend the next few days feeling like rubbish because I've failed. Whereas an intention to write feels like, okay, well, maybe I might not write any words today, but I'm going to read a chapter of this book that's been on my mind. And then that might give me lots of ideas that I can come back to the page with in a few days' time. I think that's a really interesting differentiation, is that intentions are really gentle and flexible, whereas goals are maybe not so much. So in that sense, I feel like maybe I do have intentions.
Yeah, I think the flexibility is so important because we don't know how, I always say we don't know how we're feeling, but we don't know how our hormones are doing, what's going on. And also, a lot of what's going on with us individually, we're also impacted by what's going on in the external world. So, we don't know when we wake up what's going to be on the news, what's going to be going on, and that all impacts. And I think having that flexibility of the intention helps so much. And for those, who have jobs and who go out to work, again, you don't know what you're going to be met with through other people, what's going on in the office. Is somebody going to have a pregnancy announcement? We don't know what's going to go on. So with all of those things, if we then have an intention, perhaps we can go home and maybe write a couple of pages or sentences before we go to bed, or do a meditation, or just have that kind of idea of, okay, it's a small step and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it, but not have the rigidness. I like that, Lisa. The rigidness. And maybe maybe we will always fail because of that as well, because of the rigidness, which I don't think really goes with how we are as emotional beings at all. So
Absolutely. I think there's something to be said for a bit of loving kindness as well. And I'm sure, Bindi, as a meditation teacher, you'll recognize this, but I meditate quite often. And I think that's been a real game changer for me in how I look at life and my mindset, my internal sort of narrative that goes on all the time. In that, if I don't achieve something that I wanted to achieve, that's okay. And just forgiving myself for that is something I was really, really struggled to do when I was younger. I really beat myself up about things. And now I can say, okay, well, today wasn't the day to get that done. That's fine. We'll try again tomorrow, or we'll try again next month, or, whatever it is. And just having that self changing the way I talk to myself internally and having kindness for myself, unconditional kindness for myself, has really changed how I go about my daily life, I think.
Yeah, I always say we need to bring in gentleness, kindness, and also because of all of the journeys we've been on, we've seen real harshness in life, and why continue doing that for ourselves?
I think we're not taught that anywhere, and I think back to being a child, and like that stuff wasn't taught in schools. I learned to meditate and to treat myself with kindness completely on my own. I wish I'd had something like what you teach, Bindi, like 10, 15 years ago, because that might have changed things for me. But I really had to struggle through that learning on my own to find a way to sort of accept myself in the world, I think. And I often think to myself, if I'd had children, I might not have done that work. And that saddens me, because I think, gosh, what kind of a mother would I be if I hadn't have done all the work on myself now that makes me who I am? And I feel pretty good about who I am these days, but I didn't used to. And if I'd have gone into motherhood with all of those horrible bits of baggage that I was carrying around, I mean, I just don't think I'd have been a very good mum.
It's an interesting observation because it's one I've had often as well.
Mm.
Actually, Lisa, I always think I use the term that I feel like I'm more, not less, for my experiences, because I don't know, I would have put in the effort either.
I don't think I'd have had the time.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation, isn't it? Yeah. I was looking at goals in coaching. I'm going back to my coaching training, and goals are kind of things defined as things for the outside world. Intentions are for us. And I'm wondering whether there's something around goals, and actually maybe we've kind of like, I'm outside world. No, maybe there's a boundary thing around that too, is that actually I don't feel, and I don't know whether this resonates with listeners as well, is that if goals are for the outside world, then actually is the outside world, does that matter so much in how maybe perhaps not letting it in? I'm thinking, Bindi, about the ball of light, which is so important in your meditation teaching. Just for clarity, I do go to Bindi's classes, as should everyone. They're fantastic, if that's your thing. The ball of light, and about that boundary of kind of like the outside world, and letting those feelings kind of bounce off the ball of light and say, okay, we're not going to do that. And I'm wondering if that's perhaps something around goal setting there, is that if it's for the outside world, then do we just say, no, I'm not doing that for the outside world, that's not where I am right now, I'm actually in a place of intention.
I like that thought, actually. The outside world, and we've, I guess, going on the childless journey is all about the outside world, isn't it? There's a lot there, a lot of things we're doing. I mean, yes, we're doing it for ourselves as well, but there might be health related things and, appointments, and there's a lot of things that we're doing outside of ourselves. Whereas when we realize our grief, first of all, and then realize, yes, this is life, and yes, I need to live a life. When we realize all of that, then maybe that is then the process of going inwards, perhaps. And then it's, yes, what is it for me? What is my what next? What is life for me? And that is always one of those questions, which is going to be an internal question where you receive. I really like that little thing around being a parent, just that realization around being a parent. And I've spoken about this actually recently, interestingly enough, with people around when we're working on ourselves and we're doing kind of our inner work, that takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of thinking about ourselves. And yes, if we were parents, where would this extra time and energy come in?
If the topics in this episode have chimed with you, you can get in touch with us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn and Blue Sky. We would really appreciate your feedback. Childless Not by Choice listeners can carry on the conversation with us in our safe place at the Full Stop online community. And for more details on how to join and to claim a 1-month free trial on us, please visit www.thefullstoppod.com.
Where were we? We were talking, actually, what I wanted to ask is, Lisa, around flow.
Mm-hmm.
and this amazing network that you set up around non-parents. So of course it covers child-free and childless, but is designed as a business community exclusively for people who don't have children. Are you thinking in that around goal setting or intention setting within that network? Is something that you want to talk about in the network, or is it something you're going to just kind of steer away from and carry on? You talked about how you think spring is your new start. So how does that all fit into how you're doing with Flow?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to, so with Flow, we have our meetings every 2 weeks and they alternate. So sometimes we'll get someone in to talk to us about a particular topic. We've had people talking about like social media planning and being on video and things like that. And then alternately, we'll have a session which is a bit like an old-fashioned networking session, but without all of the horrible elevator pitch, sell us your stuff kind of mindset. It's very, very gentle. We pretty much know each other now. We do often have guests come in, like people who haven't been before, so we'll do a bit of an introduction. And rather than talking about what do you want to achieve, I often ask, what are you working on at the moment? So what's lighting you up? What's making you feel like, yeah, this is a good thing that's going on in my life? And I really haven't talked about intentions or goal setting as we come to the end of December. I think what I've focused on more is just trying to give people a safe space away from all of the Christmas kid stuff. And I am quite far down the road of childlessness. I've known that I will be permanently childless for quite a number of years now. I've worked through the grief. I feel pretty good. I'm in quite a good, stable space. And I think most of the people that are in Flow are in a similar space. I don't want to talk for them, obviously, but I think we're all like, no one is in that place where we are completely triggered by Christmas. But even for me, I find the whole concept of the festive season really difficult because everywhere you turn, it's all about what are you doing with the kids at Christmas? What have you got the kids this Christmas? Everything is about that nuclear family. And I know that there are lots and lots of organizations that are trying to change the way we see family. There's lots of Christmas advertising now that focuses on a different type of family, friendship groups, that sort of thing. But let's be real, the people that you talk to in everyday life are asking you, when do your kids finish for school? What are the kids doing at Christmas? Like, it's a very child centric time of year. And I just want to give people a space where we don't talk about that. What we're talking about in the Flow session in December is probably going to be who's cooking this year, or are you even celebrating Christmas this year? I don't plan on celebrating Christmas. I don't want to cook a big dinner. I don't want to give gifts. I've told all my extended family that I'm going to be giving money to the dog shelter instead of gifts this year because I can't be bothered, because the expectation and the whole idea of this festive season really doesn't sit well with me. I just want to caveat that by saying I know that a lot of this has to do with a different kind of grief that I've experienced, which is the loss of my dad, because Christmas was always his thing. And so I can't really deal with Christmas because of that. It's not so much to do with my childlessness, it's more to do with my dad. And I know that in future years, I am going to address that. I'm going to work on it and I'm going to try and be better. But this year, I'm not interested. My intention is to just get past it. And in January, I'm going to stay in a cabin for a week with my husband. And that's what I'm looking forward to. Christmas can get in the bin as far as I'm concerned. So to come back to your question, Berenice, at Flow, yeah, we're probably not going to talk too much about Christmas. We're going to talk about maybe taking a break, because in as much as Christmas falls in at the end of December, it's also a really good time for us to take a break. I mean, nature, it's all hibernating, isn't it? Everything's winding down. The trees are losing their leaves. Everything is going to sleep in the garden. I feel like I'm doing that as well as a human being. I'm kind of going to sleep. So it's just going to be like hey, everyone have a lovely winter slumber. Let's see you back in January. And in terms of goal setting for myself and for the business, I haven't really thought past next week, if I'm honest with you. Maybe I should.
I love that. That's really good. I was thinking about how it's sort of setting ourselves up for success as well. Sometimes around intentions, it's about going back to your both of you, what you previously said about, okay, today's not the day to do something, and acknowledging that today's not the day to do something is actually a really good intention. It's okay to say
Absolutely.
that, it's leaning in and going, okay, and I've learned a lot of that, I have to say, dog training, that actually what I realized when I had this kind of rescue creature, as she was, all legs and ears, and had no real idea of, not necessarily how to train a dog, but one of the biggest lessons I learned was actually making sure that her environment was okay. There's no point trying to teach a dog to sit when you've got squirrels running around. It doesn't work. But actually, if you did it somewhere in a quiet space out of the way, then the dog is set up for success, and so are you. And if you're not in the right frame of mind to do something, then don't do it. If today's not the day to teach a dog to sit because actually you've got other worries on your mind, then don't teach the dog to sit that day. Do it another day, because then it will probably work. Because dogs pick up on stuff. And I think that kind of analogy, that kind of thing can actually be applied to so many different parts of life. Okay, today's not the day that I can do that because I'm worried about something and maybe I need to go and deal with that, or go and maybe my intention is to go and have a chat with somebody about that and get a little bit of support, or to meditate on it, to write about it, to draw about it, to create around it, or just to simply just sit with whatever that thing is and deal with that problem. And realize that as an intention. That's not a failure. I think that's a huge success.
I just really want to pick up on what you said there about environment, Bernice, because that is absolutely crucial. I think if you're in an environment that is not conducive to achieving whatever it is you've got on your list, it's not going to happen. And I think that's something I probably learned as you learned it with Molly. I probably learned that when I was working in schools teaching kids who, like, you're in a chaotic classroom and there's noise everywhere, and you've got this one kid who's just trying to sort of do their work, and they can't because the environment around them is too chaotic and too loud or whatever it might be. And I recognize that in myself now, and I never ever did before. But when I was working in corporate, having to go into an office and sit there and be surrounded by people all day, I was never at 100% because I was having to constantly mask to try and be in that space. So like 80% of my effort would be going into being normal, seeming normal, and behaving in a way that other people would appreciate. And so my job was only ever getting 20% of me. And it wasn't until I created an environment at home where I felt completely relaxed and able to do stuff that everything else just kind of went, okay, space. Now you can do all this stuff. Now you can write, Lisa. Now you can like work on the things that actually matter to you. And I think that word environment really struck me.
For me, it's about lighting, I have to say, and being clean and tidy spaces. If a space is chaotic, I can't do it. And if the wrong light is on, I'm totally like, I can't do it. I'm a great believer in fairy lights. February, this is my thing, and because it works as a nice me and my iterations, I like that. Fairy light February, it just works for me. I just keep them up. The fact that they're on actually in August as well, I just have them on because I think actually for me it just makes the environment nicer, a bit more pleasant too. And I don't do the big light either. It's got to be really, really kind of like dark and no reason to put on a light, but I have to put the big light on. Yeah, turn the big light off rather. Big light off. Yes, can't do it. Michael, how's all this landing with you? You've been very quiet.
Yeah, look, I've been reticent to say anything because this is going to turn into a bloody therapy session, I'm sure.
I'm here for that.
We're okay for that. It's a safe space with all our listeners.
So I'm feeling conflicted is probably the best way of explaining it. So I'm listening to you both, and like it all makes sense. All makes sense. But there's a few stories that have come to mind. And one of the things, I'm not quite sure where this is going to go. One of the bees in my bonnet at the moment is with my parents. And so hopefully this will have relevance. Bear with me. And one of the things that has really, can I say annoyed me? I'm not quite sure, but I have already, so it really doesn't matter. That I've watched them live their life waiting for things to happen to them. And I've watched them get to the end of their lives and they've not achieved much at all. Well, hang on. They've brought up 3 kids. Yeah, stable home. We need to get that in perspective. But if you can just think about the theme that I'm talking about here rather than the exact words that I use, because I'm not a word person. So I've watched them get to the end of their life, and it's almost like they've, I'm going to say, wasted it. Because, yeah, there's not been, I'm trying to find the right words here, but it feels like they've wasted. They haven't achieved a lot. And there's some very basic things that they should have achieved to make their end of life or their twilight years more enjoyable and better for them from a social perspective and not set work up, but set things up. And so my mind goes to, right, we've got to take bull by the horns, and you've got to dictate your life. You've got to, move it forward. So when you were talking about, go big, I'm thinking that is not me, but there needs to be a little bit of that. And so, so I'm feeling really conflicted because again, the gentleness that you've both talked about is, I get it, logically, I get it, but I can't feel it because of this thing this bee in my bonnet that I've got going on. Then there's another, so when we first started, there was a story that came to mind about when we talk about intentions and blockers to intentions, I guess. When I first started cycling in my 40s, so what's that about? Well, it's good 16 years ago, and about 45 kilos. Having a conversation with one of my mates, and we've both taken it up together. And, we're buying the stuff, we're getting the Lycra, we're doing the whole mammal thing, and we got quite good at it. And, but one of the things he said to me was, I'm really scared. What's that, Phil? Yeah, hi, Phil, if you listen. He goes, I'm really scared that I'm going to fall out of love with this sport and not like it in a few years' time. And that's worrying me. And I was sort of scratching my head going, I don't get it, because if it's not for you, then it's not for you. So be it. It's not a failure, but he saw it like that. He thought, if I give this up, I will fail. And, that was another story that come to mind when we were talking about that sort of thing where, is it really failure, or is it just that we are creatures of evolution? We have millennia of this going on, and why does that need to change now? So like you were saying, Lisa, about how you've got a whole 180, to me that makes perfect sense. I mean, that's life. We evolve, things change, so I'm going to stop there because otherwise it will go into a bloody therapy session. But so I'm feeling conflicted. And okay, no, I'm going to do one more thing. Sorry, you got me on a roll now. And so, and when I said it earlier on about writing and I don't want to take away the magnitude of what happened to you when you were younger, Bindi, but you may often hear me say, I have issues about my own intellect, because to me that's a blocker. I don't feel I'm smart enough to write. My dad's written, I don't know, a dozen novels. It must be in the genes. There are times when I think, I'll make a good story, that. But the blocker is, I don't feel smart enough to do it. Now, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So don't think that it's, that it's leaving me up at night. But I really get the idea about those blockers that come your way, and they can be absolutely bloody devastating. And like you say, 30 minutes. Well, it was a long time ago since I was 11, I
Me
totally
too.
understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry to take it on a different track, but I'm conflicted.
I like that observation that you made about your parents, about waiting for life to happen. I've written that down and I sat thinking about that when you were talking, and about how perhaps society, generally media society, tells us this is what happens to you maybe when you get old, or this is what you're expected to do. And I'm wondering whether there's something around that. I don't know, but it's again, perhaps with our generation, maybe we're bucking trends and going, actually, we're not going to wait for life to happen in that way. And maybe perhaps childless people, we're having to create a different way. We can't wait for life sometimes to happen to us because we're so ignored by society. We couldn't necessarily afford to sit and do that. I'm thinking about AWOC and what Aging Well Without Children do, but also trying to get inroads into things like Age UK and various age aging places and charities and things and movements around the world as the full stop, and having those conversations with people and starting to do more of that. An intention, there we go, a full stop intention for next year, because we have to show intentions as a CIC, because otherwise we don't keep the CIC. It doesn't just get given to us. We have to show and prove growth. One of those intentions is to start to have that conversation, because childlessness is not going anywhere. It's staying here, whether that's by choice or not by choice. It's still a thing. Non-parenting is still a thing that isn't being talked about enough. And of course, from the childless not by choice angle, we can do that. So I'm wondering whether perhaps waiting for life to happen is something that we're bucking a trend against, because actually we can't do that.
I'd like to think so, and I'm not quite sure if it's with them, if it's a generational thing where they didn't, it was like they didn't, I don't know, they felt that was their lot in life, and they weren't worthy to expect more. I'm not quite sure, and they're too far down the dementia track now to even have that conversation. But yeah, it's really motivated. It motivates me to not be that way. So, but it's not a gentle thing.
No,
it's not a gentle thing in my head. No, not at all.
Yeah.
Well, and I think also when we look at achievement and when we look at what others have achieved and what we want to achieve, I think there is that, I don't know if it's acceptance or if it's just kind of life of how everyone is living their own life journey, or what I would call soul's journey, but I understand, just kind of life journey. And perhaps they lived their life, or they are living their life as they always needed to do. Whereas sometimes we look at, we have to achieve a lot or for it to be a good life, or there's certain things we need to have said at the end of our lives, oh, I lived a good life. And I wonder also if the smaller gentle moments and the day-to-day living and all of those, the small joys, which I call, the small joys and just the moments of life, can that kind of be enough? Or is it because we've got this external pressure all the time about having to be someone or be something? And
yeah, we have to kind of be a bit more creative about what our retirement might look like, and that might be difficult, but maybe perhaps there's a element of having to invent something that doesn't yet exist, although it has existed, because we're not the first generation of childless people. It's just that it hasn't been talked about before. And obviously the work that Jodie's doing around and all the aging stuff that's going on in the community is something to look at. But yeah, maybe there's parallels there somewhere.
There are, and also that societal pressure of once you've had your working life and then you retire and it's wonderful. And then you've got to think, yes, but this is then when you mostly get your health issues and your aging. And maybe we should have retirement earlier on in our lives, and then do like little jobs later on when we can, go. It's just such an interesting topic, really.
Yeah, it's a different rabbit hole perhaps, but yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it?
I guess my intention, so I do have intentions. So and they're hopefully going to kick in a couple of years, because I want to leave the rat race behind and actually be more gentle with our life. So Vicky and I have lots of intentions for that next phase of our life. And so, yeah, and they centre around all the things we've talked about, where it's, what are we going to do today? Don't know. But again, in the back of my mind, there's that you need to be doing something because you know what your mum and dad were like. No, so yeah, it's going to take a lot of working out for me.
Yeah.
I think for me, I've reached a realization probably when my dad died that I have a choice, and I could either continue working for someone else and feeling not like I wasn't myself, like I was just going through the motions of life, waiting for retirement, waiting for something to happen, waiting for life to happen to me, waiting for someone to come along and say, hey, we know that you've got a novel inside your head, why don't you write it? Well, that was never going to happen. And when my dad died, I realized that I didn't want to just keep waiting for life to happen to me, because there is no guarantee that, like, this is so cliche, but literally every day is a gift. Every day that I wake up and I get to have a life and be alive is a gift, because there's no guarantee that that's going to happen. And at some point that's all going to end. And do I want to get to that point and all I've really achieved is lining someone else's pockets, some corporate pockets? I couldn't live with that knowledge. And so I had to do something, so that now every day I wake up and my day is completely my own. If I want to have a really gentle day with myself and go, today I'm just going to sit and binge watch The Office with the dog on the sofa, that for me is not a failure anymore. Once upon a time that would have been a failure, because that would have meant calling in sick to a job and saying, I'm failing at being an employee today. But now it's just a recognition, and often hormones come into it. Bindi, you mentioned hormones before, but it's just a recognition that, okay, that's what I need today, and that's okay. And if tomorrow is the day that it all ends, well, at least I was happy yesterday. That feels quite morbid, but it's more of an empowering feeling. I'm not sure I'm doing it justice with the way I'm speaking about it, but it's more of a, I don't want to think about the fact that I could die any moment. What I want to think about is that every moment that I don't die, I get to live.
Yeah.
I think that's very profound, very moving. Yes, you've done it justice.
We have in the mornings at work, when I actually go to the office, and they say, how's everyone going? My first answer, and they know it comes now all the time, I said, I woke up breathing this morning, everything's a bonus from here on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm one day closer to retirement.
I think there's an element of this that comes with age, though, right? Because if someone had said that to 20-year-old Lisa, I think I would have just laughed and said, how ridiculous are you?
Yeah.
Because I just don't think I recognised it then. And possibly there are people who have had much more difficult lives at a much younger age than me, and have experienced the kind of loss much younger and much earlier, and maybe come to that realisation earlier on. But for me, it didn't happen until my dad died, and that was the trigger for me to look at my life and go, shit, something needs to change here. And it's happened slowly. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not like my dad died and then the next day I woke up, with a skip in my step, thinking every day is a gift. That's not how it happened. It took years afterwards for me to retrain my mind to think in a completely different way.
Totally
Thank you,
understand
Lisa,
that.
for sharing that. Thank you.
So I'm interested to hear, so Lisa and Bindi, if I could say, give you a crystal ball and say, what do you want next year to look like, or 2025 to look like, what would you say? How about you go first? Sorry, Bindi, go ahead.
I'm still bringing my word or theme for the year in, but I feel as though I need a lot more ease next year. So that's kind of around the theme, a bit more grounding. And I think that goes back to external world, external things going on. So perhaps, more grounding, more ease. In terms of intentions around my classes and work and things, I'm going to see what goes on, and carrying on with what I'm doing, and seeing what more comes in. But I love springtime for bringing in the energy of what's coming in, but I also love January for that feeling of it's a new year, and there are new possibilities, whatever they may be. So
What about you, Lisa?
So I'm going to go against everything I've just been talking about, that I don't have goals and targets, and say that 2025 is the year that I write my novel. But I feel really strongly that is my goal for next year. It feels huge, but also very small, because it's like, well, that was always going to be the thing you did, Lisa. Now you're just actually making it happen. So my wishy-washy creative writer self says 2025 is the year that you write your novel. But very similar to you, Bindi, I think ease, openness, and serendipity is something that keeps popping into my head. So I don't know, people might know this, that the Artist's Way, which is a book by Julia Cameron, which is like a 12-week program about unlocking and uncovering your inner artist, inner creative. And I'm on week 8 of 12 at the moment. And one of the things that you have to do every week, so every sort of Sunday, I check in with myself. I'll do a little bit of writing about how the week has gone. And one of the things that she asks in the book is, have there been any moments of serendipity? Have there been any moments of synchronicity? And there's always something. So this week, the novel that I keep banging on about the fact that I'm writing, and I'm kind of doing that for if I say it out loud, then maybe it will happen. But I'm writing it set in 1997. And I've seen so many references to 1997 this week, just in like books that I've been reading, things I've watched on the telly. That year just keeps popping into my frame of reference, and I find that really, really interesting. So I'm going to be looking for more moments like that, more moments of serendipity where things just happen seemingly organically, but maybe there is a higher force sort of bringing things together and pulling our strings, and maybe we're not as in control as we think we are. So maybe I'll write a novel, maybe I won't, who knows. Watch this space.
We'll have to come back to you at the end of next year and go,
Yeah.
Lisa, how are you getting on?
I'll have abandoned that and started some completely new adventure.
But that's okay, because it's just
Yes,
an intention.
it is.
You can
Exactly.
be flexible
It
with
is
it.
completely okay. Whatever happens is completely okay.
Thank you both of you for joining us today. It's been absolutely brilliant. We've gone down some rabbit holes, but we've also taught so much, and I think there's so much here that's going to be useful to our listeners, and we would love to know what our listeners think about this as well. And if you want to carry on the conversation, then people can come into the Full Stop online community. We have 2 spaces, 2 levels, so you can come in, you can celebrate your wins with us, you can have a chat with us about this podcast in our podcast episode chat area, and you can continue thinking about things, celebrating what's going on with you, and join in with the chat as well in our other spaces. So have a check out on our website for all of that information, and we'll share that in the show notes, along with the Way of the Fearless Writer and the Artist's Way, and all of your details, so that you, our listeners, can get in touch with Lisa and with Bindi on the work that they do. Thank you.
Good to see you both.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed your time with us. And as always, you can head over to thefullstoppod.com to sign up to our email newsletter, check out our show notes, resources, and join our online community to carry on the conversations that we start here on the podcast. And as always, it's important for us to let you know you're not alone.